Hey guys, I'm here today at a very special London location. It's Berry Brothers and Rudd. Now, the building I'm standing in right now has been here since 1698. I don't think you can imagine anything older when it comes to wine and spirits. Certainly none of the distilleries that you see up in Scotland have been around this long. I'm here today to meet Joe, who's the global brand ambassador for Berry Brothers and Rudd Spirits. We're going to have a little bit of a tour. I've been here a few times before. You may have seen some content on my feed, a couple of dinners here, some launches of some of their spirits. Amazing, ancient old place. We're going to get some of the history from Joe. I've also brought a little bit of a bottle that I was given by the guys at Berry Brothers a little while ago. We're going to open that later. I'm not going to tell you what it is quite now. I'm going to go say hi to Joe and we'll have a bit of a tour. So, we're outside the shop, we're on St James's Street. There is a bit of a reason why Berry Brothers and Rudd was founded here, right?
Yes. So our journey starts back in 1698, but really our journey only starts because of this building behind us. This building here is St James's Palace. This is the Court of St James's, as it's officially known, and is actually the official home of the royal family. Buckingham Palace is a beautiful building, but essentially, compared to St James's, it is just a house. And the reason why our journey starts here is because of a fire and a king called the William of Orange, the Dutch king, who came to throne in 1689. So they moved their court and the official home of the royal palace to their nearest palace because they had one spare, which is St James's Palace. And with that comes the world with it. St James's Palace was probably the heart of the known world at the time for Britain. And with all of those people, all the people of the court, all the people that want to live near the palace. And this is where our journey starts. We start as a coffee merchant by a woman called the Widow Bourne, who is a fascinating woman that we don't know much about. We only know three things about her. We know her name, Bourne. We know that she had two daughters. Her two daughters preceded her, but the only other thing that we think we know about her is she was quite a clever businesswoman. Because back then, St James's was the thriving heart of the universe, as I've said, and through that heart was coffee. Alcohol wasn't good to be seen to be drunk by the gentlemen of the court. Everyone had their meetings, had socialised, talked politics, made friendships over coffee. It was so popular that there was 122 coffee shops in St James's alone in 1698.
Wow.
And instead of opening 123, the Widow Bourne actually opened up a wholesaler and started selling coffees from number 3 St James's where we are now. Should we pop in and have a look?
Yeah, wow, there you go. If you think there's a lot of Starbucks around now,
yep.
123 coffee shops. So we've kind of rolled down the rather uneven floor we have here, and we've got some pretty large scales here.
Yes, so these scales are our original scales. These are how we used to sell coffee, because you used to sell big sacks of coffee. So of course you need some scales to sort of weigh them on. Yep. But over time, sort of 100 years after we opened, tastes changed. People weren't drinking coffee as much. They'd started drinking wine, they started drinking spirits. It was good to be seen to be drinking these, especially sort of the French spirits and wines of the day.
Yeah.
And you don't sell those products by weight. I don't think anyone's ever bought a kilo of whiskey. Interesting sort of weight thing. So all of a sudden we had some redundant equipment. And one of our founding members at the time, a guy called Mr. Clark, who was a descendant of the Widow Bourne, decided that we would start weighing our customers. It was a service we would offer out to our customers for free. Sounds like a strange one, but back then to get yourself weighed was quite expensive. You had to go and find a doctor, get yourself weighed, go through all that procedure. And it was important to know your weight back then. They didn't know why, but there was a health reason for why you'd put on weight, why you'd lose it. So as an offering, it's something that we offered back to sort of 1765. We were the first free scales in London, so people would flock to us, and we would have our customers come. We'll sit them down, weigh them. If they're a little shy or if they were female, we would drape our windows so no one would be able to see, and people would come to our service, as well as being able to buy the wines and the spirits that you needed for your home. These records are kept in the original safes that they used to keep, and they are a thing of beauty. In these books, we have got sort of some records. These ones that I've picked up date back to about 1800s. And what you would do is you would come in and you would have your name. So every customer would have their own page, the date that you got weighed, the weight, which is in the traditional English weight of stones and pounds, which we use today. No one else in the world knows what that means, but we have kept studied like Britain do. But the best section about these is the sort of note section in the middle.
Right. Okay.
A section where you can write the reason for putting on weight. If you've had a good Christmas, like I'm sure we all have, or if you have spent 3 weeks in Tuscany, or if you've recovered from gout, all of these excuses are in this.
Excellent. Well, I mean, you go on an all-inclusive, to wherever nowadays, and you can't help but putting on a few pounds. So.
No. What better place to find out is publicly in the middle of your favourite wine and spirit shop. But my favourite of these excuses, including all of the ones where it was like you have got heavily soiled boots or heavy or wet coats. My favourite excuse for the most amount of weight in these books is mistress sat on lap.
Okay.
It was a gentleman who had lunch here once, and his weight changed by 8 stone between before lunch and after. And the reason in the comment was the mistress in lap rather than a lot of cheese.
I mean, 8 stone would be a lot of cheese.
That is a lot of cheese. Even I don't think I hit that much over Christmas.
So, I guess sometimes you talk about dusties you might find around somewhere, but also a little bit old. There's some serious dust on these bottles.
Oh yeah, there's some serious dust. Actually, the dust down here is people around here says that Berry's dust is actually probably worth its weight in gold, especially when it refers to these bottles. So we are 1 floor down from the shop in what we call this family reserve. So we are a family-run business, all the way from the Widowbourne up to the Berries now, has the same lineage of family. And with that, owning a wine shop, the wine and spirits merchant, means you kind of collect a few bottles. And the things behind us are some of our finer bottles. We have bottles of Burgundy and Bordeaux, which were laid down in about 1870, 1880.
Amazing.
It's really sort of high end. Lots of wine and spirit merchants will be able to tell you how sort of Bordeaux's age over 20, 30 years. There are very few in the world that can tell you what wine does after 100 years. And that's because these bottles behind us are actually still drunk. But one of the key bottles that I really wanted to show you here was actually a sort of an honour to our an old Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, who loved a Paul Roger in a pint bottle. And because of that, we have found some of our old stock that we had not sold. And we have our pint bottles of the Paul Roger, probably dating around from the 1930s, 1940s.
Amazing. I guess theoretically, one of the many Brexit bonuses is that you might be able to buy a pint bottle of champagne once again in the not too distant future.
I believe that is so. I mean, I think I'll be disappointed. I love Paul Roger and it'll run out far too quickly in a pint bottle. But it'll be a nice carry case, carry size.
Amazing. I mean, there's some other incredible things down here. 1966, the vintage for port as well, old dessert wines. It's an absolute treasure trove.
Oh yeah.
Cool, so where to next?
So I think we need to go further down into the bowels of underneath St James's Street. We'll head to our more modern of our cellars, our Sussex Cellar now.
So, Sussex Cellar, beautiful kind of entertaining space, and you can, look down on what's going on below, and then also an incredible array of older bottles again behind us. Tell us a little bit more about this space.
This is our Sussex Cellar. The most modern of our cellars, was only finished and completed in 2016 after we sold Cutty Sark, probably one of our most famous brands. We decided to turn this space, which used to be a little cupboard cellar in the corner there, we turn it into a double sort of storied space that looks like it's designed on a sherry bodega, sort of with these big vaulted ceilings.
No, it's really nice. I think I was in here last for the launch of the Glen Scotia 30. Obviously, you guys host for other brands as well, and Alice Angus was here with the artwork around the place. That was another great evening here in the vaults.
Oh yeah, it's an amazing cellar. I do love coming down to this one. It's sort of, and also the place where I have always suspected that if the sort of the legendary tunnel to St James's Palace happened, which I am under strict instructions to say that it didn't actually exist.
Okay, right.
Doesn't exist. But I have always suspected that that's wool over my eyes, and there's actually a gate through that door, which is the women's toilets, which I have never been brave enough to go in, even outside of order, because gentlemen.
Of course. Yeah, you don't need a priest hole, I guess, here. You've got to just deliver the wine straight to the king under the street.
Yeah, just roll the barrel down. I'm sure there'll be a beefeater down there to take delivery.
Excellent. Right, so I think we're heading off to another one of the cellars now.
Yep, so we have left our most modern of cellars, the Sussex, and we're going to go down further again to our Napoleon cellar, our second of our third cellars, and our second oldest, the oldest being the Pickering cellar, which is our classroom cellar now. But there is a little bit more history and a little bit more intrigue into the Napoleon cellar, so I think that's where we need to head next.
Let's go there and hear the story.
So this beautiful room, which is now a beautiful event space for a dining room, mainly for up to 70 people, is called our Napoleon cellar. Not Napoleon Bonaparte, but his nephew, Napoleon III, Louis Napoleon, who in the early 1800s, 1820, ran away from France around the time of the Revolution, was exiled to London for his own safety. And while here, he lived his life. He sort of became part of society and was always very thankful. And Napoleon Bonaparte sort of volunteered to become a policeman, an unpaid policeman. And while there, he met someone that ended up being a good friend, a Mr. Berry. Surprisingly enough, had an interesting wine and spirit shop on the corner of St James's Street. And it was one day when he was talking about being worried about his life that Mr. Berry offered him a corner of one of his cellars. There he could hold his meetings, plot his return to France in the safety, knowing that you are 2 floors below the streets, in a cellar that only had one entrance and one exit, so you were safe. But he was very paranoid, and he was a volunteer police officer. And with a police officer comes a truncheon, comes your policeman's stick. So every time he came to have a meeting down here, he would bring his stick and he would hit every single barrel to make sure that one wasn't empty, hiding an assassin of France in.
Amazing. Again, there's so many bottles, so many pieces of history down here. Is there anything you've got a particular favourite item down here?
So I do actually have one favourite item, and it's a very, very strange item that I need to show you. A Victorian sort of item that is just down here. So this strange looking thing here is called a Victorian beer slipper.
Right.
And it was not made for drinking out of. It was designed to be able to warm up your beer in the winter months. Basically back then, real ale should be, as we all good British people know, real ale should be drunk about 8 to 10 degrees Celsius.
Yeah.
But sort of back in the Victorian age, you didn't have temperature controlled cellars. If it was cold outside, the cellar itself was really cold. And some people didn't like their real ale being really cold. So when you ordered your pint from the barman or the waiting staff, they would ask you whether you would like your beer cellared or slippered.
Right.
And what that meant is you could either have it just straight out the cellar cold, or what they'll do is they'll bring the slipper to you, you would pour your beer in, and you would shove the nose of this just a little bit for a very short amount of time into the embers of a fire. 10, 15 seconds. And all that would do was that would take the chill out of your beer so you can enjoy your real ale at proper temperature. And it's just one of the original artifacts we have just lining the walls here.
Joe, you've got to tell me about, so what have we got over here? We've got a bunch of people's faces.
So
Pots.
these are our clay pots. So back in the day, 200 years ago, glass was so expensive to own, and glass bottles especially, that only the top 1% of people could actually afford a glass bottle.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be able to drink the fine wine and spirits. So what you do is you turn up with clay pots. These are some of our nicer versions. But these clay pots were single use normally, especially the cheaper ones, and you would just throw them away, toss them away, break them, because you can only really use them once. And people back then, with a good old British sense of humour, actually worked out that you could have a bit of fun with these.
Yeah.
You could buy pots with people's faces on them,
Right.
but not ones you liked. You wouldn't buy Beyonce of the day. What you would do is you'd buy a politician that you didn't like.
Right.
Normally the opposition of the opposition party, because the whole idea is to buy the pots, pour out the wine, and then smash your hated face on the floor. And because of this, because you were just tossing these away, these got given the name toss pots.
Right.
Which is where the insult is.
I can see where this is going. Yeah.
So calling someone a tosser these days has all stemmed back from these pots. And this is a bit of a collection of ours, of ones left over, of the toss pots of the day.
That were not tossed.
Yeah, which were not tossed.
Well, yeah, I can see the Duke of York over here, so some things never change, I guess.
Maybe our customer just liked his face and hopefully didn't break it.
We're in the parlour, another wonderful oak panelled room. We've got a couple of amazing drams in front of us. Which one are we going to start with?
Oh, I think we should start with the one nearest me, the 1998 Glen Grant single cask.
Sounds good to me.
One of my favourite bottlings we've done for a while, just for, and you'll see why.
All right, excellent.
So, as you said, we are in the parlour. So this is probably the most important room in the whole building.
Right.
Even though I like to think my office is probably the most important room, but it's not. So the parlour is the old manager's room. So the office, the dining room, the meeting room, pretty much every big decision, dating back to Berry's stop selling coffee and starting selling wine, all the way up to the creation of Cutty Sark, our famous blended Scotch that was made 101 years ago, and the creation of Number 3 Gin, the decision to sort of, rebrand our beautiful bottles, all happened in this sort of iconic room, which has always sat at the very back of the old shop at Number 3 St James's. And it's just one of my favourite rooms, just to sort of sit and feel the history, and sort of, as you will see. So while we enjoy the history, I will tell you a little bit more. There's some really interesting things going on. But this is our sort of ex-bourbon hogshead, 1998 Glen Grant. So 24 years old, was bottled in 2022.
Amazing.
One of those bottles that sort of really sort of shows the quality and the class of Glen Grant at cask strength. And one that any excuse to sort of reopen this bottle that I've stashed away in my office is just wonderful.
And I guess as well, a bottle of liquid history, but Berry Brothers, when did you guys start bottling spirits?
So when did we start bottling spirit? That is a good question. That is one very much up for, I was going to say debate, but it's questionable. The big problem is, our big history is that we actually had a little bit of damage during the Blitz, during the Second World War. We were very, very lucky that we never got hit. St James's Street got hit around, but the only damage we had was we had some fire damage. Our roof set fire after there was an explosion 5 doors down, which sent the flames kind of took out the roof. Sadly, with some bad planning, our records were actually kept in the roof.
Right.
So when we actually started bottling is, we think we've been doing this for about 2 centuries. We think, looking at sort of dates where we started moving away from coffee, we stopped selling coffee full stop in 1803. So we started selling spirits and wine from our cellars exclusively from 1803. So probably then, but sadly, because of the destruction, we can't actually prove this. So we can only really talk about the fact that we have independently been bottling for about 2 centuries. Back then, it would have been cognac, only cognac. Scotland had started having legal distilleries. There were a handful that had actually taken the licenses. Islay had started becoming a thing with Bowmore. But really it was only in sort of the 1840s, 1830s, 1840s that we really start seeing sort of proof that we are bottling or we're buying casks of whiskey. The oldest bottle that I know of in this building dates back to 1858, and it is an unknown blended malt from Scotland. That's all it says on the label. Everything was blended back then. Single malts just weren't the thing. People didn't see it as a sign of quality that it was only one producer. You wanted to blend something to create something better than its parts was believed back then. Even though that thinking has definitely been flipped since.
Well, that's interesting. There was that doll's house of Queen Mary that we saw downstairs at one point. That had a miniature cask of Glenlivet in it. That I guess would probably have never been bottled as a single malt at the time. But was Glenlivet kind of still a thing back then?
Well, Glenlivet was. The distillery Glenlivet has been around since it was one of the first wave. It was the 1800 waves, I believe. I can't remember the actual date. But also back then, any distillery from the Glenlivet Valley was also called Glenlivet.
Yes.
So the one that I know off the top of my head is if you buy most casks, especially older casks of Glenrothes, have Glenrothes Glenlivet written on it. So that mini cask and all of that could be Glenlivet distillery or could be anything bottled under the Glenlivet name because it was from that estate, that valley. So what is inside those little wooden casks, I don't know. But also there's far too much wood maturation that will just taste like wood juice. Wood juice, really, and will probably be quite thick if you can even get it out of the cask these days.
This, on the other hand, is not thick wood juice. No. It is beautifully light and delicate.
I just really love this. It's just full of sort of soft yellow fruits. Sort of almost sort of burnt, toasted, desiccated coconut, and just some sort of aged vanilla where it's really started to mute, and you just feel that raw material through it. I think it's one of my favorite, as I said, one of my favorite jams we've done for a while, and definitely sort of one of those ones that kind of gets excited every time I try it.
Yeah, it's really interesting. There's kind of like almost a kind of peach liqueur kind of on the tip of the tongue as it starts, and then it comes into kind of like a more of a spiced kind of dried apricot kind of vibe, and then as I said, the kind of the toast note I really like as well.
Yeah, there's a lovely bit of wood smoke at the back. There's a lot going on. It's one of these ones that sort of not to give away, but this is January right now, and this being an old building, it's quite cold. So this is really beginning to warm up in my hands. Every sip I've taken has just changed. And this is what I love about this. This really opens up with a little bit more time outside the bottle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Delicious. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Berry Brothers, obviously, you've got a lot of Scotch, but recently, last few years, you've also been doing a lot of spirits releases from distilleries outside of Scotland, and even outside of the UK. You've had the Nordic casks, and then more recently the Pioneers series as well, where quite a lot of the whiskey, some of it is obviously from Scotland and England, but around the world as well. Is there a particular reason why you guys are looking further afield? Is it something you've always done?
So we have always, we've always looked at kind of being inquisitive and exploring the world of spirits. We mainly do whiskey, but we also bottle rums, cognacs, armagnacs. So it's not just whiskey, we're exclusive. But the one thing that we are lucky about is that we are not located in Scotland. We are located in London, which is probably one of the most multicultural cities in the world. And we want our bottles to reflect that. We want to sort of give people that sort of trust underneath our label that what they are trying, what they're exploring, will be great, will be high quality, and just kind of really showcase what people are doing around the world.
So this is something I've teased at the start of the episode. It's a Williamson. So for those of you who aren't 100% sure, that's a Lefroy. Bessie Williamson was distillery manager in the 60s and kept the distillery alive. This is quite a special bottle. It's got my name on. Not sure I've had one of these before. It was given to me by the team at Barry's last year. It's been finished in a Muscatel hogshead, I believe. Yes. Obviously, amazing colour on it for a whiskey that's less than 10 years old, bottled at 57.9%. I haven't actually tasted this yet. Oh wow, I think the colour in the bottle is impressive. I think in the glass, actually, especially side by side with the Glen Grant, is something to behold.
So this is our 2013 bottled end of 2022, so probably 9-year-old Williamson.
Yeah.
This has spent, I think, about 18 months, maybe even 2 years in this this Muscatel, this sweet sort of wine cask, which has just brought this thing alive.
Yeah.
I think this is one of my favourite styles of Williamson, because especially with this amount of time, I get beautiful strawberry jam, sort of rich dark fruits, and that peat just shining through. As you can see, probably from the colour, this is a cloudy number.
Yeah.
We do not chill filter. We do not add colour. And this was just one of these casks, a half cask, that was just incredible, and we just couldn't wait to sort of bottle it.
Yeah.
And it's just everything I have to love about Williamson. I'm going to stick with the rules of the of the naming. No. I'm just one who likes the name and likes the honour of Bessie Williams, who changed the world of whiskey with her stars, especially putting Islay onto the map with sort of her innovative sort of changing of the Lefroy distillery, bringing in that sort of the odd numbers of stills, playing around with different sort of size spirit stills, to really just give you texture, longevity, and just what you have to love about sort of this style from this wonderful distillery.
Yeah. I think sometimes what I find with these kind of finishes and sweet wine casks, they can become quite tannic or they can be quite cloying. This is neither of those things.
No, this one has really sort of kept that, and any of that sort of like sulphuriness that you get from the sweet wine cask is married very well with that sort of that Islay peat, which really just sort of blows up sort of more and more, sort of like a sort of smokestack, sort of puffing out sort of your sort of beautiful smoke, which just keeps filling the palate.
Yeah, for me, I mean, you talked about strawberries. It's kind of strawberries with a kind of balsamic glaze to start with. The smoke really starts to come through. It's clearly kind of south side of Islay, but not aggressively so. There's a little bit of kind of tar there, but it doesn't have the medicinal kick that some of those kind of younger, rawer kind of casks can have. So the wine has, I guess, tamed the spirit a little bit, but kind of sits in harmony so well together.
Yeah, it really does. This was one of those bottlings that was just really sort of fun to see, especially when sort of with the cloudiness you went into it just unknowing, just not knowing what it was going to taste like.
Yeah, I think this is a bottling that kind of really speaks to finishing as an art form. That clearly you couldn't leave it in a cask like this for the full 9 years.
No.
But to be able to experience something like this, obviously very, very different to a Williamson at 9 years old if it was straight from a kind of a bourbon hoggy as well. Amazing whiskey.
And this is fully down to our wonderful team of like spirit creators who select these casks, who do our finishing program. We are very lucky to be a wine and spirit merchants, giving us access to some amazing wine casks, and that we can sort of hand select the best ones.
Yeah.
And do our finishing program in, which is something that we're really sort of exploring and going even further with. To hopefully make really unique spirits.
So that's fascinating. So is the likelihood of something like this that would have been a kind of a Muscatel bottled for berries that the spirit went into?
But potentially, or a vineyard that we have worked with who had some barrels that they wanted to move on. We also have a great relationship with our cooperages, both in Scotland and in Spain, that have some access to some really sort of wonderful casks which they're playing around with seasoning, as well as the producers and the wine producers that we have historic relationships with. So.
Amazing. I mean, I guess finishing an art that's been around for 25, 30 years now. Where do you see the future of Berry Brothers, both short term in terms of what's next, what can you tease, and then longer term as well for a business that's been around for so many hundreds of years already?
So short term, we are flying straight into our next seasonal release, our spring release, which will sort of has got some beautiful Scotch whiskies in there. Our exceptional cask, which is definitely one that you do not want to miss out on. That's all I will say, just because I think it's worth the wait. It is quite an old number, and it's one that I haven't yet tried, but next week I'm getting my sample, and I can't wait to break into that. And then longer term, as a company, last year we did our big first collective. Our collective number one, the Pioneers, which was all about looking at distilleries that were sustainable, doing sustainable practices, doing planet positive sort of production. And this year we are doing collective number two, which may or may not have a very similar theme, because it's a theme that is very close to the family's heart and us as a business, and especially me as a brand ambassador. The excitement of looking at what the future tastes like as well as looks like in this world of spirits, which we love so much. So there are some interesting things coming forward.
Joe, amazing tour, unbelievable amount of not only history but living history here at Berry Brothers, and incredible to hear about what the future holds as well for the business. Thank you so much for hosting us. Really looking forward to seeing the spring releases and what's next for the collective as well in particular. So yeah, just want to say a big thank you for having us here today.
And thank you for coming down.
All right, it's been amazing.
Sláinte.
So we're here inside the new Pall Mall Berry Brothers shop. Obviously the history doesn't stop. The entire ceiling filled with 100-plus-year-old oak staves from Bordeaux barrels. And I was talking earlier about some of these dusty bottles, and 1977 vintage port, 1963 vintage port. There's a lot of kind of sweet wines, fortified wines, things that if you stroll into your local wine shop that you're not going to be able to find. Fine wine reserve over there. There's some seriously high-end stuff. Of course, Berries have got their own brands as well. Some of it very affordable. I know, for example, their clarets, £13.50, £17.95 for bottles there. Clearly not at the cheaper supermarket end of wine, but very affordable, very good quality wine for what you're getting. And then, of course, we've got a big wall of whiskey behind me. Everything from Irish, Japanese whiskey. This has been stocked to the brim, and of course a large proportion of it is Berry's own stock themselves, from the 1999 shop exclusive Lefroy that Joe was telling us about earlier, to far more affordable bottles as well. There's younger whiskey, there's older whiskey, there's a good selection of just about something for everyone here. So actually, I think the Glen Grant that we tried earlier, I don't know whether that's the same one or not. There's another 98 there, although this one I think is from a butt. It does definitely look a little bit darker. Comes in at £230. Another couple of younger Williamsons are around. Ardmore, always a great distillery to get from independents as well. What I also like about Berry's is there's lots of different editions that come out as well. So there's a Christmas Highland Park / Orkney there. So that one, a 17-year-old. And then there's some of the Pioneers as well. So I think the two things that have really caught my eye today, there's a 26 and 29-year-old Bunnahabhains. They're both £250, bottled back in 2016 and 2018 respectively. Obviously hung around on the shelves a little bit, but they're lightly peated Bunnas, which is really unusual for a Bunna of that age. So actually, I think they would be definitely bottles to come in and check out. They're not going to be available anywhere else online, so this shop is probably the last place you can get them outside of a random auction where they might crop up. But obviously a lot of these would have been bought as drinkers, so they're not going to be seen certainly on a kind of regular basis either. But look, we've had a fantastic time, full of history, full of information. Thank you so much to Joe for showing us around. Really hope you've enjoyed the episode. I've had a great afternoon. Make sure you continue to like, follow and subscribe everything that we're doing at the Enthusiast series, and please do let us know what you'd like to see next. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Slán.